devil. Oh, here comes the devil. Oh, here comes the devil.
Oh, the devil with the devil, says I.
Shh, look out for the devil. Look out for the devil. Look out for the devil.
Oh, the devil with the devil, says I. You're so afraid of old man Satan, now why don't you stop your hesitating? You're gonna be a long time dead, so the devil with the devil, says I. You're always giving me the dickens, telling me that life's no easy pickings. But just as long as I have fun, why, the devil with the devil, says I. You can have your social teas and bingo for your fun, but the things I like to do, you stop me one by one. Now even if you make me stronger, that ain't gonna make me live no longer. So even if I go to shh, the devil with the devil, says I.
Look out for the devil, look out for the devil.
Oh, the devil with the devil, says I.
Ladies and gentlemen, Leo and Christy, this is the Leo Zagami Show. And here we are for another Saturday full of information you can't find anywhere else than here, right here. And so we want to thank, first of all, our sponsors who make this show possible. Who are our sponsors today, Christy?
Nalgarazada Minta and our anonymous donation that paid for the whole month. So, no, for this last month, not the month coming up. So,
ladies and gentlemen, we don't have any sponsors basically
no,
for
we
September.
don't. No.
So if you don't see us next week or the week after, it's because simply we don't have any sponsors. We rely on you for our sponsorship, and because we're not really selling that many books.
No, we're
lately.
not. We sold one yesterday and two one today,
That's
two
terrible.
the day before.
That's terrible.
And then one day it was 0. So
Oh God.
it's like $10 a day.
No, that's not possible, guys. So, like I said, we might take a break if we don't have any sponsors. But if you want to help us out, you can do it through GoFundMe or Cash App. I want to, of course, leave you GoFund details that you can then use if you want. Huh?
We actually don't have sponsors. We're not like one of those people that say we're going to leave and then we don't, and we're always around. I mean, we really don't. So when we say we're not going to be here, we're really not going to be here.
No, because maybe some people don't understand that we also have extra costs during the summer months in Palm Springs due to the electric bills that are amazingly high, and that's why we don't offer you more shows, guys. It's simply it's like
we'd have to pay for them.
We will have to pay out of our own pocket. But today we are discussing something that I wanted to discuss for a long time: Martinism, the Martinist order, this Martinist esoteric current. Nobody really knows about the Martinist order out of Freemasonry, and so first of all, I want to introduce you the subject of today with a brief video introduction, welcoming you once again to the Leo Zagami Show, thanking you for your support. I hope that support manifests in some way, because the show of today is a very particular one, guys. I mean, I heard of the Martinist once I was in Freemasonry. At the time, you didn't really have the internet, or at least it wasn't so popular. So I couldn't have other ways of hearing about this mysterious group. But what is Martinism?
Martinism is a form of mystical and esoteric Christianity concerned with the first man's fall, his state of material privation from his divine source, and the process of his return, called reintegration or illumination. The Martinist tradition is based on the teachings of Louis Claude de Saint Martin, a French mystic and philosopher from the 18th century, and his predecessors, Martinez de Pasquale and Jacob Boehme. Martinists are often associated with Freemasonry, and the tradition has been perpetuated through several Martinist orders, each offering different interpretations of the philosophy. Martinists believe in a higher spiritual realm and seek to attain this higher understanding or consciousness through ritual and symbolic acts. Initially established in Lyons as a form of esoteric Masonic society, its members believed in the potential to communicate with planetary spirits, minor gods, and genii of the realms beyond the mundane. Louis Claude de Saint Martin, born in 1743, started his career as a distinguished military officer. However, he left this path to dedicate himself to scholarly pursuits and the arts, ultimately becoming a fervent theosophist and a follower of Jacob Boehme. He endeavored to restore Masonry to its original character of occultism and theurgy but was unsuccessful. Initially, he designed his rectified rite to comprise 10 degrees, but after studying the original Masonic orders, he reduced them to 7. Masons have criticized him for introducing certain concepts and adopting rites that diverged from the archaeological history of Masonry. However, this was also done by Cagliostro and Saint Germain before him, as well as all those who were well acquainted with the origins of Freemasonry. The Martinist doctrine is based on reintegration, the belief that humans have fallen from the spiritual world into the material world, and must seek to ascend back to the spiritual world. This is achieved through a process of spiritual transformation and inner enlightenment. Martinism continues to be practiced by various groups worldwide, each with specific rituals and teachings. However, they all share a common belief in the fundamental principles of Martinism: the fall and reintegration of the human spirit.
Welcome to the Leo Zagami Show. Today the subject is a very particular subject, a secret society that champions the fact that they actually can bring you back to the divinity. There is actually a book here, The Great Book of Nature. It's a book from the 18th century that was republished 100 years ago in Italy by a guy called Vincenzo Soro with his commentary that introduces very much this subject. It's kind of a little bit like, we were kicked out of the Garden of Eden and we are like brought back into that knowledge that of course brings us to the tree of life. And there is actually here a sort of depiction of how the system, the initiatory system, positions the Martinist order at the highest levels within the Illuminati. The Illuminati, of course, that ultimately are controlled by these invisible masters and these Rosicrucians. But however, why we know so little about them? There is 3 branches really of Martinism. I had direct experiences with the Martinist order when I was a Rosicrucian. I worked with them. And so I had various experiences with the positive side of Martinism as well as the negative side of Martinism. there is 3 branches. One is the branch connected to the teachings of Martinez de Pasquali, this gentleman who wrote actually the book that talks about reintegration. It's an unfinished book, a book that is very interesting, a book that maybe a lot of people will be, if they're curious enough, they can find on the internet. But at the same time, of course, the guy who gives the name to Martinism, which is that other phase, because you have the Martinizism and then you have the Martinism. Claude de Saint-Martin was the secretary of Martin de Pasquali. And so he was known as the unknown philosopher, and he was also a guy who was very knowledgeable about things. Now, we want to know more about this figure, Claude de Saint-Martin, but we want to also know more about Martinez de Pasquali. So today I want to introduce both of these figures, as well as another figure, Willermoz, who instead brings what he has learned from Martin de Pasquali into the Masonic realm through the rectified Scottish Rite, which was born within the strict Templar observance. So people, of course, will be very confused with all these names, and they will have a difficulty in understanding about all this. But let me explain you why it was so groundbreaking at the time, this treatise of on the reintegration of beings, which is this unfinished esoteric work of Martin de Pasquali, the founder also of an order which functions as an inner circle of Illuminati. When I was actually within British Freemasonry, they came to me and they said, the real Illuminati are the Louis de Cohen, the inner circle of the Martinist order. And so very little is known about the Louis de Cohen, but they were born out of the teachings of Martin de Pasquali, and it was actually Claude de Saint-Martin was initiating this Louis de Cohen. Louis de Cohen is still a Masonic order. However, Louis Claude de Saint-Martin went on writing himself a few important books, and eventually he came out of all these orders because he didn't like the whole thing. So he wanted to bring everything back to a more simple way of the heart. However, today, Martinism is known by its symbols. First of all, the Martinist pentacle, which is a symbol of the universe, not to be confused with, of course, the Seal of Solomon, though there is actually historians like Scholem who said that the Sabbateans were connected with Martin de Pasquali. So once again, we find also a darker side that might also emanate because of this connection with the Sabbatean. And of course, they later became the Sabbatean Frankists. Now, on the contrary of Freemasonry, you don't wear aprons. You wear a collar, eventually, on the third degree. You wear masks, and you have a different kind of look from Freemasonry. So let me show you, first of all, the exterior of all this, and also the symbolism behind it. They wear masks because they want to, they claim, they want, in this case also, you can notice that this guy is a priest.
It looks very eyes wide shut.
Yes, it looks very eyes wide shut. And also the fact that SI, like I wrote in volume 12 of my Confessions, is Società Jesus, is the initial of the Jesuits.
Yeah.
This is the pentacle symbol. This is, of course, a superior inconnu, which means a third degree, which means a guy who is there to initiate others. However, Martinism, describing it simply as syncretic Gnosticism, would be a little bit of minimizing something which is much more profound. And so today, first of all, like I said, we would like to show, of course, the differences. Like you said, eyes wide shut. This is an even more ominous image of a Martinist gathering, and they have the mask. First of all, is a symbol. It's a symbol that means that you want to erase yourself and your ego when you go into this kind of lodge. Every single thing they're wearing has a symbolism very strong. The mantle, what they're wearing, the cloak, is also part of their symbolism. I have, of course, like I told you, I had experiences directly with the Martinists, and today, of course, I have also a document whereby I would be able to show you from this document from the late 1800s that was made by the General Delegate of the Supreme Council of the Martinists here for the United States of America. I will be able to introduce you better to some. You see, this was 1896, and it says here, the secrecy of the present document is left to the loyalty and the honor of the one to whom it is trusted. The initiations, of course, can be very picturesque, very beautiful. But first of all, I would like Christy to read from the preface here, because we understand really what they are about. Can you read it? You can see it?
I can see it. When, at the decadence of the royal art, the Rosicrucians of England, our predecessors, buried in the naive symbolism of a decaying corporation of mechanics the secret of their operations, they believed that the tradition of their art would reach future generations in all its purity. Ingenious as it was, the intention of these lust adepts was not fulfilled.
Last adepts.
I said lust.
Yes.
Oh, last. I thought it was, okay,
yeah.
Well, it's very light. Okay, the last adepts was not fulfilled. Nowhere has the sacred science suffered from more
severe mutilations than in the bosom of that brotherhood, which has descended to the rank of a society ignorant of its own nature and its primitive aim. So here we have...
you read that very well.
Oh, thank you. Well, you're always telling me I don't read so well, so I'm trying to improve.
No, well, then I don't read well when I say it, so...
No, but what we see from this introduction, this preface, is like an intention of taking over from the decadence of the royal art, of the Rosicrucians, of the past brotherhoods that were not reflecting really this great work, which is the work of perfection that one does on himself. But we will learn more about this during this show. Martinez de Pasquali and his disciple Louis-Claude de Saint-Martin, contemporaries of the last Rosicrucians of England, did not see the necessity of entrusting the Hermetic tradition they retained to mercenary associations, but gathered around them a small number of men of desire willing to sacrifice their personalities with no other hope of reward than that of transmitting to a few carefully selected disciples the luminous teachings of the Hierophants of antiquity and of their successor, the Kabbalists and Hermetic doctors of the Middle Ages. So it positions itself in the Hierophants of antiquity, but also mentions the Kabbalists and the Hermetic doctors of the Middle Ages. Martinism, they say, lived obscure and away from the convulsions of societies, at least in the exterior circle, absorbed in the contemplation of the great mysteries of nature, till the universal movement towards idealism upon all the surface of the globe bore an eloquent testimony to the opinion advanced by every true and honest observer. Now we talk about materialism. See, the materialism is powerless to respond to the cravings of the scientific man. Let's forget when Martinism really emerged and then re-emerged, because Martinists emerged originally in the 18th century. But by the end of the 18th century, after the French Revolution, the arrival of the Illuminati of Weishaupt and of the more material political secret societies that were indulging with political revolutions and so on, they kind of went, they kind of disappeared to then re-emerge 100 years later with a guy called Gerard Encus. Gerard Encus was the guy who gave Martinism its new life. We have an image of Gerard Encus, this bearded man from France, who was also an excellent doctor and was a guy with a lot of knowledge about the Kabbalah. I have actually one of his books about the Kabbalah here in my library. And this is, of course, the Lodge, and this is Papus, otherwise known as Gerard Encus, well known also amongst, of course, the Gnostic circles. But let's go back and understand more about Louis-Claude de Saint-Martin. Who was Louis-Claude de Saint-Martin, this mystic, this unknown philosopher of sorts, who went through the French Revolution and then wrote a book about it in more cryptic and hermetical terms known as Le Crocodile?
Claude de Saint-Martin was a French mystic and philosopher who lived from 1743 to 1803. He's often called Le Philosophe Inconnu. The unknown philosopher Saint-Martin believed that the material world is only half of reality, that what we see around us are our everyday physical surroundings are full of fantastic and deceptive images. He insisted that truth lies precisely where we cannot see it. For Saint Martin, each person lives in two worlds, a visible world of matter and a hidden world of spirit. The tragedy, he said, is that we've forgotten the second one. This was the core of his philosophy. We already live in a spiritual realm, we just don't remember. Born into minor nobility in Amboise, France, Saint Martin was groomed for a worldly life. He studied law. He joined the army. But he soon abandoned both paths to pursue mysticism. In his 20s, he became a disciple of Martinez de Pasquale, who practiced ritual initiation with deep spiritual meaning. But eventually, Saint Martin left the secret societies behind. He rejected formal ceremony and instead taught what he called the way of the heart, an inner path of contemplation, love, and humility. He believed that ritual without feeling is empty, that real transformation happens within. His ideas, however, were not welcomed by the leading thinkers of the Enlightenment. Many dismissed his work as obscure. One reviewer called his writing a pyramid covered in hieroglyphs. Voltaire, always sharp-tongued, mocked his book of errors and truth as absurd, obscure, crazy, and stupid. Crazy and stupid. Saint Martin's belief in invisible realms didn't sit well in an age devoted to reason, clarity, and science. As a result, he remained mostly unknown, except in mystical and esoteric circles. At the heart of his thought was the conviction that the senses deceive us. He believed that the sights and sounds of nature are like veils designed not to show us the truth, but to train our souls to seek it beneath the surface. He once said, "All mystics speak the same language, for they come from the same country, despite different symbols or doctrines." Saint Martin believed all true mystics recognize a shared divine source. He wasn't the only one to say this. The Swedish mystic Emanuel Swedenborg, for instance, claimed that heaven interacts closely with the world, reflecting it like an inner mirror. Saint Martin embraced this view, but gave it philosophical depth. He taught that the human mind has an inner eye, but that eye must be illuminated by a light beyond time and space. Intellect alone is not enough. True insight, he said, comes from the soul's contact with the eternal. This belief connected him with older traditions like Plato's wilder forms, or the Hermetic idea that as above, so below. For Saint Martin, the outer world reflects the inner, and the soul is always trying to return to its forgotten source. He saw mysticism not as escape, but as recovery. Our remembering his spiritual path was deeply Christian, but not conventionally religious. He warned against what he called churchism religion as empty form, without feeling. Instead, he invited people into an inner experience, an unbreakable union with the divine. He wrote that the real initiation is to enter into the heart of God and make God's heart enter into us. He compared this to a tree drawing strength from its hidden roots. If we go deep enough into ourselves, he said, our outer lives will naturally bear fruit. This echoes other Christian mystics like Saint John of the Cross, who spoke of the soul tasting God directly, beyond word. For Saint Martin, too, love and humility were the only way to access the hidden world within. He believed that God is not far away, but present, here, in the depths of our own being, in his own time. Saint Martin was seen as a strange figure. One revolutionary lumped him in with other metaphysical follies. His ideas didn't leave much impact on Enlightenment philosophy, but they lived on quietly. His influence appeared in Romantic writers like Joseph de Maistre, Lamartine, and the German mystic Franz von Baader. He became a forerunner of the spiritual reaction against Enlightenment rationalism. In the 19th century, Saint Martin's ideas were picked up by theosophists, mystics, and esoteric thinkers even today. He remains mostly unknown to the general public, though a modern mystical order, Martinism, carries his name still. His ideas resonate, especially now in the 21st century, as people turn to mindfulness, meditation, and spiritual experience outside formal religion. Saint Martin's message sounds familiar. His claim that reality is layered, that deeper truths lie beyond what we can measure, echoes in modern psychology, spiritual movements, and even the work of thinkers like Carl Jung, and his words still feel timely. All mystics speak the same language, for they come from the same country. That country, he believed, is the spiritual world within us, not far away, not in the clouds, but always here, beneath the surface of our own hearts. Saint Martin invites us to remember the second world we all inhabit, and to begin the journey not outward, but inward.
So this journey inward started though when he was the secretary of Martinez de Pasquali, who himself instead was a rather different character. So Martinism today is, of course, different things. It can be a Martinism closer to Claude de Saint Martin, can be Martinezism, at least closer to Martinez de Pasquali, his initiator, or it can be both. It can include, of course, a path of spiritual development through initiation and study, often involving esoteric tradition, Christian Kabbalah, but there is those who also focus on theurgical practice. I saw, and myself really, there has been positive Martinists in my life, people I've been very close to, who really demonstrated that their level of initiation was superior, was genuine. And then I saw instead Martinists like the ones I got involved through the Fraternity del Rosicruciano Antigua of Arno Krumeller, who were instead Satanists, who had gone the dark path. So you see, it's a little bit like Freemasonry. It can be one thing or it can be the other, you know? That is a little bit how it is. Today we have many different Martinist orders, but let's go back to that publication that started it all, because treatise on the reintegration of beings in their first spiritual divine property, virtue and power. And this is Martin de Pasquali. Martin de Pasquali, in a publication that is courtesy being made available on the internet through the Martinist order, the traditional Martinist order of Amorc. Now, a lot of people will say, but Amorc is a rather commercial version, and I've been often criticizing it, for being a bit too new age at times. For the high degrees of Amorc, they have their own Martinist order, and they have actually published a video which gives us an idea of their own version of Martinism. Now, I'm not saying this is always the case, but the way they present the whole thing might be interesting, and for those who are interested in knowing more about Martinism, it's definitely a possibility to go and pick up on the internet the video that they have made available. However, there is also a traditional Martinist order Pasquali prayer, which I find rather interesting.
At this time, everything sleeps in the nature of material and corporeal beings. I will soon sleep myself. It is in this time of silence and rest that at times you deign to manifest yourself to humanity by the ministry of your divine intelligences. How happy I will be, I, my soul good, if you would grant me this favor of instructing me and enlightening me through the voice of my guiding spirit. Send me a salutary dream that demonstrates for me the communication of the powerful operations that it accomplishes for me. When I awaken, may I retain a living impression which can become the power and rule of my conduct through the day to come. If you permit, Eternal, may I again this. Amen.
Prayer to reconnect somehow with the divinity. What do you think, Christy? I mean, it must be.
Is it God?
Of course, it's going back to God.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody needs to do
the
that.
incredible thing about Martinism is that it reinterprets also Freemasonry, where the lost word is actually Jesus. I mean, if the lost word is Jesus, for the Freemasons, maybe they should have thought about it before, without having to go through all this. No?
But I think that the things that I heard that you talked about, like the parts like banishing the ego and the spiritual journey, I understand it. And so the God initiates that. You can't do it yourself. And so if he could write it down, that's incredible, because he's able to remember and write it down with clarity. But who knows, because once you start, I don't know.
Now, first of all, let me explain.
This dimension is pretty corrupt. So.
Yes, this dimension is pretty corrupt. And here I wanted to show, if it was possible, something. Let me see if it's possible. I have to check out the actual Martinist evolution. You see, they were evolving in a time in which you had also a different kind of Illuminati, here you see it. This is in the evolution of the Martinist. You have the Louis de Cohen, you have the Rectified Scottish Church, but you have also the Illuminati of Avignon, of Dom Pernetti, who from 1766, born like a decade before the Illuminati of Adam Weishaupt, who though tried to follow a more traditional hermetic kind of path, and then also the Illuminati Theosophists, the Philallets. Unfortunately, then the problem is, and the primitive right of Narbonne, is that all these groups got infiltrated by people who destroyed the spiritual path and instead embraced a materialistic path. Now, Claude de Saint-Martin wrote various books, Des Erreurs de la Vérité, which is a very important book, but then, of course, further on, he wrote Les Crocodiles, like I said, a kind of a coded interpretation, a study of the astral of what really went on during those really difficult times of the French Revolution that changed forever the history of France and of the world. People of all conditions and religion can be admitted in theory to the order of the Martinists, because then you have, of course, men and women that are allowed, but then there is some groups that say within the groups you have the Louis de Cohen, and the Louis de Cohen has to stay traditional and only for men. There is all sorts of rules, and of course, like we said, there is also all kinds of Martinism that we find, some of them better than others, some of them actually even going into the dark side. I want to show you, for example, a list of the Martinist order. But before that, like I said, there is these symbols. The mask, the symbol that hides the initiates from the demands and distractions of the material world, that represents the barrier to a spiritual materialism and the ego. You have the cloak, which is the traditional initiate vestment that symbolizes the protective barrier, allowing the wearer to operate in both the material and spiritual realms. And then you have, of course, this cord that they wear, the cord belt, which symbolizes solidarity, perseverance, temperance, and the concepts of reintegration, which is central, we saw from the very beginning, for the process in which the human soul undergoes illumination and returns to its divine source. We have an encouragement towards self-reflections and a pursuit of wisdom to understand the inner self and its connection to the universe. So all this, of course, like I said, there is some groups which are positive, other groups which are less positive, and it's quite interesting the fact, though, that when you get into the third degree, which is the degree of unknown superior, there is actually this SI, which represents the Society of Jesus. And so it means that at one point, the Jesuits, seeing, that this could be actually an opportunity to infiltrate Freemasonry, they position themselves there. And that's why here, for example, in the official page of the Martinism in England, you have in this degree that of unknown superior or Society of Jesus. But conventionally called unknown superior, one practices the principles learned in the previous two degrees and learns the history and philosophy of traditional Rosicrucianism and Martinism. And of course, the order Martinist et Synarchique is the one that then with Papus became one of the most prestigious and is still probably amongst the most prestigious Martinist order. Though, like I said, there is a variety of Martinist orders, and they, of course, use the symbolism of the sword and the mask. Here, This, for example, is a Brazilian Martinist Hermetic order with this is the traditional symbol of the Martinists, the sword and the mask, and the grade 3 superior incognito workshop. In this case, this is from a superior incognito workshop. Welcome to the Leo Zagami Show. We have a lot of people watching us from all over the world. The subject today, of course, is a perilous subject, is a subject that might not be easy for everybody, but it's very important because it's been discussed very rarely, especially in connection to what is happening today. Now, amongst the Martinists, there is also a very important moment in history that has changed the history of mankind, because aside from the French Revolution, Claude de Saint-Martin, when Papus Gerard d'Encausse took over the idea of revamping the Martinist order, he went to the court of the Tsar. It was a Tsar who would be, of course, overthrown by the Bolsheviks, by Vladimir Lenin. It would be a Tsar that, of course, was very much also distracted by Rasputin. Rasputin would be considered actually very evil by Gerard d'Encausse, and another figure of great importance that went with him to the Russian court. Now, some people accused Gerard d'Encausse of distracting the Tsar in a very difficult moment for the history of Russia. But he went there with this gentleman who seems like a very modest gentleman. But this modest gentleman apparently had as much powers as Rasputin. Remember, Rasputin had magical powers, great powers. That's why he was in the Russian court. It wasn't just... This guy is known as Maître, teacher Philippe de Lyon, Nizier Antin Philippe. And this guy, together with Papus, went to Russia. He was born in 1849, died in 1905. He was reputed one of the most powerful healers and miracle workers of his time. The power of the hand is a very important power for people who claim they can heal with the touch of a hand. Now, this guy who I've just shown you, who gained reputation as a miracle worker, he was 4 times on trial for illegal practice of medicine, because often these kind of people then, get condemned by the mainstream academics and the doctors for practicing medicine. They are called charlatans and whatnot. But he went to St. Petersburg, and he was actually awarded there a doctor's diploma. The Russians just gave him a doctor's diploma. The Grand Duchess Militsa Nikonevna of Russia introduced Dr. Philippe to Empress Alexandra Fedorovna, who was the last, unfortunately, empress of Russia and the consort of Nikolai II. And Philippe became at that point a close advisor to the imperial couple. This happened, like I said, in a very difficult moment in Russia, because from 1905 onwards, the emperor of Russia was forced into accepting the presence of these lodges of communists, basically chartered from France, amongst them the Grand Orient of the Russian people, in which then Vladimir Lenin managed to rise to power with his Bolsheviks, and then we all know the rest of the story, because then, unfortunately, the Russian imperial family ended up in the most sad way possible. But one thing is very indicative of Philippe's death, because his family discovered that when Master Philippe, because that's Maître Philippe means Master Philippe, died, he was paying the rent to 52 families in need.
Aww.
And his disciple, Jean Chapin, continued to pay all the rents until his death in 1932.
No, they must be good.
So there is some elements in this story. You see, there is a lot of controversy surrounding Gerard Dencous, Papus, surrounding Master Philip, surrounding Martinism. But the fact that they were actually doing some good at times, and this good was actually visible, it wasn't just theoretical, it was actually manifested in real things. It is rather interesting. And of course, you know, we can always call people charlatans, but even Cagliostro, when he moved from one city to the other, he will always use the first floor to feed the poor. This was a rule of his own school, of his own making, because by feeding the poor people, by helping the poor people that then pray back to you, you can in a way benefit and then heal other people. So there is initiatic powers that are known in Martinism, but Martinism is also about prayer. Prayer is a very important tool within the Martinist, fold. Prayer is considered in this day and age by the Martinists still, and because I studied some of the more recent publications on Martinism, is still one of the most important things. Prayer, which in a way helps stress, helps healing, and in a way, prayer helps. I'm not saying that prayer can be a substitute to a medicine, but we are also at times using and abusing medicines. Isn't that the case, Christy?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Okay.
Absolutely
Prayer to God. I'm not saying that the prayers have to be to some, we have a corruption of the so-called experts, of the so-called doctors, of these people who go and come out of a university calling themselves doctors and then are basically mercenaries of the big pharma. Now there is a lot of controversy. We see there is a lot of controversy with Make America Healthy Again, with what Kennedy wants to do. Because, of course, he has cleared up the CDC of people who, during the pandemic, forced us in the most insane choices. And those choices harmed us. People who were forced into vaccinating themselves and then now have to pay with the sicknesses and stuff that go with it. So, I think that we have to understand that the mind takes this energy, that our thoughts create a better reality. And if we, of course, have this conscience, this awareness, and this experience, we can actually help healing each other, help healing other people. So the nature of prayer, but also the nature of creating prayer chains. Now, I remember with Dr. Safwat, this guy who used to help me out for many things. He lived in Cairo, and he explained me how he had a chain of people praying for him, both amongst the Coptic Christians as well as the Muslims, and creating a power that was then used for the benefit of the people. So praying is not just something, this week, a terrible tragedy happened, guys. We all saw it. a guy identifying himself as a woman went and shot and killed 2 kids and injured many others, and everybody, of course, saw the demonic. And at one point, then you had also people on the left, like Jen Psaki, who went on TV saying, the prayers, we don't need the prayers. We don't need the prayers. I mean, the whole thing that went on this week against prayers and what the Democrats have done by saying something like that is revolting. I mean, of course, Jen Psaki can say whatever she wants. We are free to say whatever we want. But I mean, the fact that she went on an anti-prayer rant in a moment in which families were mourning for the loss of their kids, for the kids getting injured while they were in a mass at the opening of the school year. I mean, Jen Psaki is, of course, being criticized, but the power of prayer is a reality that doesn't have to be just joked around like Psaki. And so I really am, now I really understand the problem of this society here. This is not a problem about a guy who, of course, was mentally ill, because he said himself, I'm fed up of being a transgender. I should cut my hair, but it will be my own defeat if I do that, after the mother encouraged him actively to change his sex formally on paper. And it's not only the Democrats that are doing wrong things in this society, of course. It's not just a political thing. This is a matter, though, that is not just mental illness. You can't just ascribe it to mental illness. Of course, it's also mental illness. You don't go and kill kids in a school. You are sick in the head, but it's also demonic. It's also demonic, and this demonic is ruling our society more and more because of the lack of prayer, because of the lack of faith, because we are living in a society with the wrong values. And of course, I mean, I'm not saying the Martinists are the solution of our problems, but we have seen that, of course, within secret societies that rise in a period in which you had, of course, political revolutions and so on, and the Illuminati were very much focused on the political realm. At least they were focused on the more spiritual one. They wanted to bring themselves back to God somehow. I'm not saying the man should do it in the right way. Then you have the psychotropic drugs, the SSRI, which it's another big problem. And that's why people should read what I wrote in volume 11 of my Confessions. The fact that today, aside from everything else, the mental illness of this killer, but also many others, is connected to those psychotropic drugs that they introduced in the 50s while they were starting their MK Ultra experiments. They also introduced these drugs that by the 1990s had to heal everybody in the name of science, like Prozac or many others. Now these drugs are actually showing that they are dangerous, that they are not the way forward, the way that they claim they would be the solution to all the problems. So we are in front of what I described in volume 5 is the decline of the West and the rise of Satanism in our society. And of course, behind the scenes, we still have the Jesuits. Like we said, they have actually been the ones that instead of talking, because I went and see, the post of Father James Martin of Outreach on if he was like really, sad about what has happened in a Catholic school, if he was crying for it. No. He was thinking about the fact that Outreach and his gay pilgrims and his transgenders are going to the Vatican next week in Rome. And may God curse them. Because that's something that we're gonna remember, dear Father James Martin. Your sins are ascribed, written, and denounced in this book, and you and your outreach pilgrims in Rome, may the curse of God come upon you in this city, which is my city, not your city. Just so you know. I take my own responsibility for my words, they're not my wife's, but I want to be very firm. If you represent outreach, which claims to be the way in which the transgender, the LGBT community comes together, you should be mourning for what happened in a Catholic school. You shouldn't be going to Rome and, saying, I'm going to take a break from writing on Twitter X because now I'm busy. I'm going to Rome with all my friends. We have eyes to see here, Father Martin. God is watching you, Father Martin. Remember that. Nobody's stupid here. In Naples they say, "Ca nessuno fisse." So I'm very much talking to you, Father James Martin. This charade that you have created, that you're going to bring in front of the Pope on the Jubileum as a pilgrimage, welcome. God loves you. We would like to know a little bit about why the Pope, you see, Rome, Jubilee year, Rome, with mass pilgrimage in front of the Pope, and you don't apologize for what has happened in a Catholic school with kids? I'm sorry, Sodomites. I'm sorry. God is willing to forgive you, but you need to really change your attitude, because pride is of Lucifer. Pride is of Satan, who goes in front of God thinking he's the most beautiful, but he gets kicked ass and sinks below the pits of hell where he still is. There is no reigning in pride. There is no reigning in pride. That's for sure. And I hope that people understand why I've said what I said just now. Because, you see, I follow Father James Martin on Twitter to know what Father James Martin does. Because I'm very interested in following the enemy. It's very instructive to follow the enemy. So let's go and check Father James Martin. Because, like I said, it's about understanding the enemy and what he does. And if he doesn't talk about, if you don't talk about the problems, it's very difficult, So I think that is a scandal, absolutely a scandal, that Father James Martin is not going to Rome, kneeling down all the way as a Catholic should do. He should go in those steps. Remember in San Giovanni, where you go and you go up and
you on your knees, you go up these stairs.
On top of that, we see that Father James Martin is also canonizing one of the most dangerous and deceptive religious teachers of our time, Jesuit Father Teilhard de Chardin. Another guy I've been talking in this book. I've been talking in volume 6.66. I've been talking in volume 7, a guy who inspired basically what we now call the internet, and whose work has been very important for the Jesuit order. So I hope that, guys, we can really get to have a better church, but I have my doubts about today's church. I really have my doubts. I have my doubts that the church of today can bring us anything positive with this kind of characters. We said that Father James Martin is actually the communication expert behind Pope Leo XIV. So everything he does is about that, no? So Pope Leo XIV, among the most influential people in artificial intelligence. Oh, wow. What do you want, a cookie? And then, dear friends, God willing, I will be in Rome until September 8th with the Outreach Catholic Pilgrimage, along with 40 pilgrims. I will appreciate your traveling prayers for safety.
Oh, sure. You know, he can... Oh. I'm not saying nothing. And you said it all, Marie.
Yeah. So it's a little bit, you know. I'm sorry that I got carried away.
No, you shouldn't apologize. It's exactly correct. People need to have less fear and start, you know, defending God more.
Absolutely. And if you like what you have seen on our show, continue to support us. Definitely get volume 12 of my Confessions, because this is the last book of my Confessions of an Illuminati, and it's the most powerful installment that can be read without reading all the others, and is dedicated to the core problem of today's society, which is the Jesuits. God bless you all, guys. From me, Christy, and we will see you hopefully next week if sponsors permitting, or if you purchase our books, we might also be able to carry on our show also with the purchase of your books.
Thank you to our anonymous sponsor and Malgrisada Minza.
Yes, that at least permitted for the month of August the broadcast, and we hope that we will have more sponsors for the coming month, because that will be very important. You see, this is a moment in which you have a lot of people on the internet that talk rubbish. I mean, when I heard this guy the other day
joining us, Kevin is back. He's got huge news to share. I've been reading the legal paperwork he sent me pertaining to the case against Pope Leo. It is hard-hitting, graphic, stomach sickening in parts of it, but he's laid it out legally with his witnesses. Absolutely mind-blowing. And you know, one of the most important points that he makes in the legal paperwork is that these people who are at the top of society, whether you're the Pope, whether you're a king, an emperor, whatever you are subject to the law just like the rest of us. And if you think you are above the law, Kevin is going to come and get you, folks.
Well, I had this show, and then it goes into speculations that are unproven. All my respect for his work. Sean Atwood once called me. We never managed to actually get it together to do a show. But it seems like at times there's a lot of speculation and a lot of unproven stuff. When instead, I like to bring you the receipts. I like to bring you the evidence when I'm talking, like I did just now. And this is what makes so special the Leo Zagami show with Leo and Christy. So don't miss it next week. And of course, we end up with Vincenzo Vice Versa.
In that time, our world has taken so many steps in the wrong direction. utopia, science, technology, social organization.
We see, we made the great pictures today. Do you want to show them? Then you show the margarita, guys. I have to show you. Let's stop everything. We need to show you the margarita that I made today, guys. With the Christy, we made a fantastic margarita.
We didn't even fight. Not once.
No, it was perfect. We did this margarita. Guys, if you want to do a margarita like this, you can find the book on Amazon. It's the Zagami Family Cookbook. Let me show it to you. Here it is. Don't forget the Zagami Family Cookbook. Transform your kitchen in a 5-star Italian restaurant with the Zagamis. Zagami Family Cookbook, authentic Italian cooking, fresh pasta, pizza. Today we're really becoming really serious about our pizza. And then there was another pizza, I think, that was with the carciofi, anchovies. How you call them in English? Artichokes. Artichokes, yes. And peppers. And we're going to have that now, actually. When we are about to eat this pizza.
Yep. That's
great, guys. Today is pizza day. And I repeat, if you want to make your own pizza without wasting $30 in a fancy Italian pizzeria, that's it. You can do it with my advice in your book, because it's your book. You put it together. You did a great job.
That's my book. I made it and I learned it. And you're a topper. So
but I make the toppings.
I am the one that makes the crust. It's the foundation of the whole thing.
Absolutely.
But if I didn't have your great toppings, it wouldn't be this great, fantastic pizza. You didn't fight.
Absolutely. Take care, guys.
Technology, social organization, dehumanization. Technology, social organization.